to 1 Samuel chapter 18. I also forgot to mention that a bio of Pastor Chad and his family is out in the kiosk, as well as his doctrinal statement. If you want to look those over afterwards, those will be out there in the foyer. Are you an optimist or a pessimist? I'm curious. My clicker's not clicking. Let me click to the next slide for me there. How many of you would say that you are an optimist? You look at the glass as half full, okay? How many of you are pessimists out there? That's okay, you can admit it. All right. Okay, interesting. It's kind of 50-50. I was curious about this. I don't know what I'd consider myself, especially when those are the only two options. But if these are the options, then I don't know where I would fall. There's a variety of ways that you can look at a glass that has half water in it. I don't know if you're a surrealist at all or a skepticist. Is it even water that's in the glass? I mean, do you find yourself maybe being one of more of the other things other than just an optimist or pessimist? How many of you are the skepticists, be honest? How many of you just even skeptical that I would ask a question like this to try to find you out, so who the skeptics are? There is 50% water in all of these glasses. But a lot of times it's in how you look at it. That kind of says not as much maybe about the glass or the water that it does about us, right? And how we're looking at things. In this passage, we're going to see David being a godly man, God blessing him in a variety of ways. And then we have two different perspectives on that. We have the perception that Jonathan has of a guy like God blessing a guy like David. And we have the perception that King Saul has on God blessing a guy like David. God's still doing the same thing in David's life, but two different people are looking at it from different perspectives here. And that's what we're going to look at in our passage this morning and just responding. If I go back, responding to God's people, we're going to see these two different ways they're responding to God's work in David's life, or responding to God's man that he has chosen to now be anointed and lead the way and lead as king of Israel, but not yet. So we're going to see how they respond here in this passage. So follow along with me. We're going to look at verses 1 through 5 as we begin. So this is right after Goliath. As soon as he had finished David speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Let's pray. Lord, help us this morning as we come to your word. May your word speak to us. May we submit ourselves to your word. May it reveal our hearts. May it reveal, Lord, I pray, a heart of love and gratitude for your people, for what you're doing, the work that you're accomplishing. And Lord, if this passage reveals any sort of pride or jealousy, any sort of anger that's in our heart, Lord, we pray that we'll take care of that quickly. We'll seek forgiveness and grow and become more like Christ. So thank you for your word as it does reveal our hearts. And we just pray that we'll just keep following you. We're thankful for this passage. In Jesus' name, amen. In these first few verses here, the highlight really, most of it's going to be on King Saul. But it starts out with Jonathan in his humility. It's guiding his heart towards acting in a godly way towards David. Apparently, Jonathan was sitting around while David was talking. Remember how Saul asked for David to come here? Like after he killed Goliath, he's like, who is this guy? Bring him here. I need to get to know him more. I need to get to know his family. And so David went and he's like, I'm just a humble servant of my father's Jesse. We're servants of yours. You know, the Lord has done just wonderful things. And even in that process of going to kill Goliath, Jonathan would have been around King Saul. being his son. He would have been around when David was sharing about the Lord has protected me when I fought off the lion and the bear. The Lord's going to protect me as I'm going to go and fight off Goliath, and we're going to get this victory, and the battle is the Lord's. Jonathan would have heard all those things. He would have heard David just praising the name of God. And as he saw David then go out and defeat Goliath, he saw that God worked in David's life. And this guy, David, is a man of God. And he said, and he came back, and David was like, not about me. This is about the Lord. He's doing the work. I'm just a humble servant. David, I think Jonathan looked at him and was like, are we best friends? Like, I think we're best friends now. Have you ever had those conversations with people where you're maybe talking about your favorite movies? We're like, we have the favorite movies. Talking about some of the music you love, like, we have the favorite band. We love the same things. We have the same hobbies. Like, wait a minute. I think we're best friends right now. Like, we love all the same stuff. This is fantastic. This is great. As Jonathan was hearing David talk about the Lord, his love for God and his passion to live out whatever God had in front of him, John's like, I like this guy. Listen, we need more of this. I want to be close with this man. Because you remember back to 1 Samuel chapter 14, right? When Jonathan was about to go and kill some Philistines, he brought just his armor bearer with him. And they were climbing up that rocky crag, and they're like, you know what? Let's seek the Lord. Is God going to give us this victory? And then God clearly gave him this victory. He's like, David kind of did the same thing. Let's seek the Lord. Let's go before him. Let's do what God wants us to do. And look how God gave those victories. What a beautiful thing that is to see a fellow man of God. And he's like, especially after being around his father. His father, not a man of God. The Lord had left him, and now this harmful spirit is attacking him. He's like, my dad doesn't love the Lord, but now here's a guy who loves the Lord like I do. And it just drew him just so naturally right to David. That kinship was formed through their mutual love of God. And what greater bond is there? I know we have family bonds and we love our blood family, but really through the blood of Christ, the unity that we have as Christians is so strong. It is so deep because we believe the same things, because we know who our God is, and we come together as a church, and it's a beautiful thing. And then what does David do? Jonathan covenants with David. And that's a really encouraging thing as well, as he says, I'm going to make a covenant between you and me. He's like, I'm going to make this legal document so we can be bound together. My love for you is not a flippant love, or whenever you just start, doing things I don't like, where it's going to be over between us. Like, no, we're going to make this covenant, and we're going to be together. This is often the language that we use with church membership, is that we covenant together. We're committing ourselves to one another to say, I'm with you, you're with me. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to love each other. We're committed to serving one another. We're going to do that together for the glory of God. But this formal contract here, Jonathan is going to bind himself to David, which, as we learn later on, not a great prospect. David is not a rich man. David is not a part of that. I mean, Jonathan's the son of the king. So bringing in David into that realm, I mean, this isn't like David's really going to help him out. So the only reason we see here, he loves him because David loves the Lord as well. So now as Jonathan starts giving David all this stuff, he gives him his robe, verse 4. He gives him his armor, his sword, bow, belt, like all the things that would have been attributed to the son of the king. Jonathan's like, you can have it. That's how close they were. He is treating David as a fellow son of the king. Now, Jonathan doesn't realize it at this point, but we know who the next king is going to be. We know it's going to be David. And Jonathan, by covenanting with David and giving him this kingly stuff, these rights that he had as the son of the king, he's kind of essentially, symbolically saying, my relationship with you is far more important than even the relationship I have as being a son of the king. And we can see this symbolically happening, like kind of passing off the reins to where David is going to be the next king. So now Saul sends David out, verse 5. He sends David out to go and kill more enemies. Every time he sends him out, every military mission, David is successful. He does it all. He wins the battle. He comes home. And so Saul's like, all right, this guy's great. Let's put some more men of war underneath his rule. And so he leads more men of war to go and fight battles and to defeat the enemy for the king Saul. But Saul has a bit of a different perspective when he starts seeing how successful David is. He has a different outlook on this because he's not a man of God. So he's looking at God blessing David, and here's some things that he's thinking. Is really his pride is twisting his heart. And it's twisting his heart towards destruction. Because we're going to look at a few ways here. Underneath this point, there's going to be 4 ways that we're going to see how his pride is just twisting things, where he's taking things that are good and right, and he's seeing them as evil. He's seeing them as, this is wrong, this is against me, because he's so focused on himself. So would you follow along with me? We're just going to read verses 6 through verse 16. As they were coming home, David would return from striking down the Philistine. The women came out of all the cities of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. He said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands? And what more can he have but the kingdom? Saul eyed David from that day on. The next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. Saul had his spear in his hand, and Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them. First, we see Saul's jealousy. Through his pride, his jealousy twists a song of praise. Saul is sending David out to go and fight the battles. He's just came back from defeating Goliath among multiple of the Philistine army, and he's just doing everything that's asked of him. But that's not the problem. Saul's happy with the victory, but he's just unhappy with how people are responding to David. So this song rings out, Saul struck down his thousands and David his 10,000s. Now, because it's a song in the Hebrew poetry, I was learning a little bit this week of this, and there's a parallelism that's happening in this song. They're not trying to communicate that David is better than King Saul. What they're trying to communicate by saying thousands and 10,000s, they're just trying to communicate there's just more and more. They ramp out the second part of the lyric of the song to just demonstrate how many people that they've killed together. King Saul and David. Because one thing they do is they put Saul's name first, recognizing he's the main guy. So they say Saul, his thousands, and then to ramp up this song of Jubilee, they said David 10,000s. But they're really trying to attribute all the killings, all the victories to both Saul and David. And that's what the problem was for David, or for King Saul. He took this song and he's like, oh, they said David 10,000s. So he misinterpreted what they were saying. And not only that, but he didn't think that David should be included in this at all. He's the king. How dare they equate David with me, put us in the same song? How dare they say the 10,000s after his name? I should be the one that gets all of the praise for all of this. Within this song then as well, and look in verse 8 of what he says, as he's misinterpreting the intent of the song. Because do you think that when these women come out to sing to meet King Saul, that they're going to try to sing a song that makes him mad? that denigrates the king. That wouldn't be their intent at all. They're just victoriously saying, wow, we won. This is great. Look, King Saul, David, so many people are being killed here. This is wonderful. So many of the enemy are being destroyed. That's their intent. They're not like, here, let's get a little jab in on King Saul. Let's say it this way. No, you just see from the passage, they're just going out that we got the victory. This is fantastic. But then Saul's response, just highlighting and demonstrating that he's not interpreting things correctly. That he says, what more can he have but the kingdom? He's like, they said, David in 10,000s, why don't they just make him king? That's the only thing that's left for them to do. That's the only thing left they could give him, is to make him king. Now that is just an inappropriate way of thinking about this. But that also demonstrates the pride that he has. He's like, I need to be praised so much, I put that on the level of being king over Israel. So if they don't praise me, they're praising somebody else, just make him king. I'll be done with this. Like, put him in charge. That's how extreme he is in trying to understand that he's out for his great name. He wants all his people to fight off the enemy, to avenge his name, to avenge his enemies. And then in verse 8, his pride, he just keeps on just thinking, what is wrong with him? Why is he so focused on himself? Isn't he happy that they got the victory? Does he not understand what their intent is? And then from that day on, verse 9, he eyed David. He's like, I gotta watch out for this guy. Even though David was doing everything right. It was the people who were singing. Be mad at them, maybe. But eyeing David, he doesn't want David to get anything good in his life. And then verse 10, the harmful spirit comes back. Now, when it says that he raved, it's a word that literally means he's prophesying at this point, but this is a negative prophecy that he's doing. In this negative sense, he's trying to teach and preach and share about all these things, and it's just in his anger, he's going on and on and on. So in verses 10 and 11, we see now that his anger is twisting the kind actions of David. The one guy who's been hired to make him, to just put ease to his pain, was David. He's done it before, multiple times. Harmful spirit comes, David plays the lyre, really nice. The spirit leaves and he's put at ease. Here he's doing it again. David, day by day, he comes in. He does this all the time. But Saul, because he is so angry, because he is so proud, it starts twisting his thinking to say David is the enemy. He tries to pin him against the wall with his spear, and David evades him 2 times. It's tremendous that somebody who's doing something nice for him, he thinks, oh, evil intent. You're just here because you want something. Pride can do that, twist even these kind things into assuming that there's some sort of evil. Now, as an interesting side note, if you look over at chapter 19, verses 9 and 10, just a mini side note, but I think we should talk about it because it kind of came up last week as well. When we got to the end of chapter 17, we saw that Saul didn't really know David, but we're like at the end of chapter 16, it sounded like he really knew him well. We have a similar situation coming up here in chapter 19, because in 19 verses 9 and 10, you see it says, then a harmful spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the lyre. This is very familiar to what we just read. And Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he eluded Saul so that he struck the spear into the wall, and David fled. So we see a very similar thing happening. We're going to get there and we're like, why is he repeating himself? Didn't this just happen? What's going on? So here's what's happening. Let's just pretend you go to a baseball game, and you're going to the baseball game, and the first inning, you're telling your friend as you come home from the game, they say, how was it? How was the game? You say, well, first inning, they go up 3 runs. The second inning, though, we hit a grand slam, and the ball came up over my head. The guy behind me grabbed it, and then there's this major altercation back here happening. Like there was some kid involved, and it was crazy. And then in the 4th inning, It was just going back and forth. They got some runs. In the sixth inning, they got some runs back. It just went back and forth. There were some diving plays. And then you get to the very end of the game, we're like, and we won. It was such a great game. And you're probably thinking, awesome, yeah, I wanted to know about the game. But what happened there with that altercation with a kid? And like, oh yeah, that's a whole nother story. So he stole the ball from a kid, and then the kid was sad, and they ended up bringing a bat to sign that was signed, and you go into the whole this separate story. It happened within the game, but that's a whole nother conversation that we're talking about. That's kind of what's going on here. Like within this conversation of the story of Saul's jealousy and his pride, we have a situation where he's throwing a spear at David, and we might be like, wait, why is that happening? So we'll get a little bit more expanded edition in chapter 19. We'll get a little bit more interactions with some other people, like with David's wife, Michal, and some other interactions happening that'll just help us fill out a different part of the story. But our author is saying, I want us to focus on this part right now. And the next chapter, I'll address some of those other things. So that's what's going on here. All right, back to our story. So let's get back to see how Saul's pride is twisted his thinking. So first, he takes just songs of praise, and he thinks, oh, they hate me. They love David more than me. Secondly, he takes a guy who's just trying to ease his pain and saying, I got to kill him. Thirdly, we see this fear of God. Not a good fear of God that we're told to fear the Lord, but this is a fear of God that is scared of what God is doing, and he's just twisting that the Lord is near. He doesn't like it. So in verses 12 through 16 there, we already read that passage. But he's seeing that now David, he's winning every battle he's going into. It doesn't matter what battle he sends David into, David's winning. And he's starting to notice some things, and he's starting to see that God's people, the Israelites, they're starting to like David more. Like, I think the Lord is with him. And it highlights that the Lord is no longer with King Saul. And so he sees that as a threat. Again, that's pride twisting our thinking. Can you imagine seeing God work in our church or work in another church or another person's life, and you're like, oh, that's the worst? That'd be crazy for us to think, right? We want God to do awesome things. We want God to save people. We want God to do wonderful works. Imagine looking at somebody else. God is blessing them and doing great things, and we're like, oh, I can't believe it. That's not good. I'm so scared of that. That's kind of crazy for us to think about, but that's what Saul's doing. He's been trying to kill David time and time again because he sees the Lord is with him, and that brings great fear. He knows his kingdom is going away. Samuel already told him that. So I wonder if he's starting to put together these pieces. The Lord left me when Samuel said my kingdom is going to be taken away. The Lord is with this guy. I wonder if he's going to be taking my place. So he's scared. He's fearful. Now let's look at verses 17 through 30, and that'll be the number 4 on this list. Then Saul said to David, verse 17, here is my elder daughter, Merab. I will give her to you for a wife. Only be valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him. And David said to Saul, who are my relatives that my father's clan in Israel, that I should be the son-in-law to the king? At that time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, she was given to Adriel, the Maholathite, for a wife. Now Saul's daughter Michal loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing displeased him. Saul thought, let me give her to him, and that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Therefore Saul said to David a second time, you shall now be my son-in-law. Saul commanded his servants, speak to David in private and say, behold, the king has delight in you, and all his servants love you. Now then, become the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spoke those words in David's ears, and David said, does it seem to you a little thing to become the king's son-in-law, since I am a poor man, have no reputation? Servants of Saul told him, and so did David speak. And Saul said, thus shall you say to David, the king desires no bride price except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged of the king's enemies. Not God, the king's enemies. Now Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law before the time had expired. David arose and went along with his men and killed 200 of the Philistines. And David brought back their foreskins, which were given in full number to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him his daughter Michal for a wife. But when Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, Saul was even more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy continually. Then the commanders of the Philistines came out to battle, and as often as they came out, David had more success than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was highly esteemed. You see, Saul's fear of man, his fear of David specifically, twists his love for other people. Because the people loved David so much, Saul realized that he can't be the one to kill David. He's like, I can't do it. That's going to make David a martyr. Then everybody's going to hate me. But if I can get the Philistines to kill him, then my hands are clean. I don't have to worry about it. So it's a longer section that we have, and as we just read, it's really kind of weird and extremely evil. You see the twisting of what happens here, of his mind, of what he thinks is a good idea to get David killed. But he promises his daughter to David, which he should have had already. Because if you remember back in the last chapter, we saw that whoever kills Goliath should be able to marry into the family. But he didn't do that. Saul didn't come through on that promise. And then we see in this passage in verse 17, he should have married Merab. But Saul went back on that as well. But then when he finds out that his other daughter loves David, he thinks, this is a great way to get David killed. He's definitely not winning Dad of the Year, that's for sure. So he speaks to David in such devious words, after almost killing him already by throwing a spear at him. Now he says, hey, want to be my son-in-law? Isn't that a great idea? And Dave's like, again, in his humble, just humility, he's like, who am I? Like, I shouldn't be the king's son-in-law. I'm a nobody from nowhere, no reputation. He's already killed Goliath. He's got a reputation, a great one. But he's just humbly thinking, like, who am I? What kind of man am I to be a son-in-law to the king? Now, then he offers this bride price. Saul says, here's a way that you can become a son-in-law to me. Now, having a bride price, that is a normal thing back in those days. Much like with Jacob, and remember Jacob and Leah, he worked for 7 years to marry Rachel, but then his father-in-law deceived him, married Leah, and then he worked another 7 years to marry Rachel. And so this bride price was a normal part of their culture. Now, the reason why they did that was partially because the daughters were workers and helped out with their business, their farming, and all of that. And so then to take a daughter away from that family, it would lose them money, right? It would lose them a worker there. And so they would pay to compensate for that work that the daughter would do. Another aspect of it shows that they can provide for the daughter. Right, here's the money I can offer you. It provides a kind of a covenant as well, a promise to say, I will take care of your daughter. So there's a variety of reasons why they do this, and we don't practice that now, but I do have 4 daughters, so that might be a great idea to bring that back. Probably not, don't worry. But anyway, so that's not what we practice now, but this was a normal thing back in those days. And so Saul takes this normal practice of just providing through money or giving of land as his bride price, and he just twists it. And he asks for something that's gross. And so he goes and tells David, and David's like, killing Philistines? He's like, that's easy. I can do that. And he's been doing it all along. So he goes and he kills a whole bunch of those bad guys, and he kills them, and not just for 100, but he knows Saul to be a man who goes against his own word. So he's like, I'm not going to go and kill 100. It's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to kill 200. And that's what they do. Because of his valiance in battle, because he has warriors there with him. It was no real shock to him to go out and do this sort of thing. And so he goes and he kills them and brings back that prize. Lays it before the king, and they start checking to make sure he's killed enough, and he did. But then Saul had another realization in verse 28. Look at verse 28 with me. He saw and then knew the Lord was with David. After this, if this didn't get him killed, he's like, he had to get real close to those Philistines. He had to get real close and personal. He had to be right there. He couldn't just send other guys in. He had to go in and fight that battle. The Lord was with him, and that caused fear. Fear of David, a fear of the Lord, a fear of his own kingdom being stripped away from him. Let me ask, what do we learn from this? When we have a heart that is after God, we're going to have no problem lifting up other people who love the Lord. It's going to be a joy for us to partner with other Christians and even covenant with them, not only to seek their good, but even to help further the cause of Christ. But when we have a jealous heart, when we have a prideful heart, we're going to see other people as a threat to us. Whether they follow the Lord or not, jealousy can create in us anger and hatred. It can twist us into taking something that's good, and we'll wrongfully judge somebody else's motive because we want what's best for us. So if something else is happening, we see people as a threat, we're going to be like, they probably did this because they're trying to get this out of me, or they're trying to usurp my authority, and so they're trying to do something to get at me, even if they have no intent with that at all. But pride and jealousy just twists our mind to see other people as our enemy. And so what's the remedy for this? Remedy is to look to Christ. Ultimately, think about the way that Jesus dealt with other people. Who is the one who is deserving of all praise and all glory? It's Jesus. Look at this verse from Isaiah 53. But he was despised. He didn't get the praise that was due to him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. As one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. When he came and lived this perfect life, healed so many, he did not receive the praise he was due. Yes, he had that one time in the triumphal entry where people were singing and shouting praise to the Lord. That was a rare occurrence, and it was only a week later, that very end of the week, that they were yelling, crucify him. He didn't attribute that praise, and he didn't say, I deserve more. I can't believe you guys wouldn't treat me the way I should be treated. He had to go to the cross. This was prophesied that he would be despised. And he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. Even though he didn't receive the praise, he still willingly died for us and took our pain, and took our penalty on the cross. Then a reminder for us, how do we fight off jealousy? All of us, all we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned, only the worst people, every one of us, to our own way. And the Lord has laid on him, Jesus, the iniquity of us all. We can fight off jealousy by reminding ourselves we're all in the same boat. We're all sinners. We're all people who have fallen underneath and fallen short of the glory of God. We are deserving of the full penalty of hell for all eternity, every single one of us. But God in his grace and his love sent Jesus to take the iniquity of our sin, put our sin on his shoulders so that we might be saved. And so no Christian walks around and says, I am awesome, that's why Jesus saved me. I am better than you, that's why Jesus saved me. We don't say that because we're humbled underneath the cross and realize all of us have turned our own way. Christ died for us and saved us. And we want to share that with people. So let's look at what God's doing in the lives of others, the work that he's doing, and let's join in. Let's be excited about that. Let's pursue the glory of the Lord. Let's not look at other people as threats. Look at other people as, well, they're getting more praise than I'm getting. And Let's rid ourselves of that, and we need the Lord's help with that. Because jealousy is something that can easily creep in. So we need to ask the Lord and seek his forgiveness and just praise the Lord as we lead into communion. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for Christ, willing to humble himself to the point of death, even death on a cross, submitting himself to that point of death and rising from the dead so that we might have life. Lord, humble us. Keep us humble. Don't allow any competition between us. Don't allow any jealousy or pride to be stirred up in our hearts, that we think we're deserving of all the praise in any way. Keep us humble so that we can learn to just walk in a godly way.